Welcome to the She Speaks to Inspire podcast. I'm your host, Julia Kraft, your authentic expression mentor and public speaking coach. She Speaks to Inspire is an empowering public speaking podcast for women with public speaking fear. Unlike other podcasts on public speaking, She Speaks to Inspire not only gives you tips to be a confident communicator under pressure, but also helps you regulate your nervous system for less anxiety, learn lifestyle practices to reduce burnout and overwhelm, and reconnect with your feminine leadership presence for more authenticity and comfort in your skin. I believe it's the quiet ones, especially the quiet women, who have the most important ideas. I believe the world really does need your voice. So let's dive in. I'm excited for today's episode about how your body remembers public speaking trauma and the nervous system, because this is something that I don't hear other public speaking trainers talking about. This intersection between trauma, the nervous system, public speaking, and performance anxiety. Generally, those 3 or 4 things are delegated to separate experts. But I find that they all intertwine and interact with each other when there's a moment of public speaking and we feel anxious. You feel anxious. Before I dive into the meat of our content, if you are loving this podcast, first of all, thank you so much for being here and being a dedicated, engaged listener. Please take a moment to leave a review and become a follower of the podcast. It would make a big difference for me. I would really appreciate it, and it would help other women to find this podcast and get the inspiration and support that they need. Let's start at the beginning. Nerves. You might experience nerves as butterflies in your belly, a flushing through your throat and cheeks, a racing heartbeat, feeling faint, nausea, shaky legs, or a shaky voice. What are your physical symptoms? There's so many that are possible. Perhaps it feels like your nerves take over. They take over your body, they take over your mind, so you can't think about anything else. And it's almost like they come out of nowhere. You can logically think to yourself, this is fine. It's not that big a deal. I know this topic. I know these people. I'm prepared. You can talk to yourself like that all day, but these symptoms are still there. Your nerves are still taking over and hijacking the show. It can feel like it doesn't make any sense. I totally understand because I've had this happen a million times to me. So the important thing to understand is that speaking nerves, anxiety, and fear, it is not logical. It's not mental. You cannot talk yourself out of it. So stop trying. What you need to learn and realize is that it's a muscle memory. The fear, the anxiety, the nerves, it's a primal response rooted in a muscle memory. Let me break that down. This is going into how trauma works. And it could be helpful to talk about extreme trauma, like in situations where there's diagnosable PTSD, because in those situations, it's much more obvious and concrete. You go off to war. You're in a traumatic situation that's very stressful. You almost die. You see people around you die. You come home, and it's difficult to adjust to civilian life. Now, I've never personally experienced that, but that's the classic scenario that we call PTSD, right? Here you are, back at home as a civilian, in a calm, safe, quiet environment, and you can be physiologically experiencing the same stress that you experienced when you were at war. That's because the trauma has become a muscle memory. Now, logically, this doesn't make sense. You can say to yourself, snap out of it, you're safe. But that doesn't work with PTSD. Over this past century or so, We've learned that in the mental health field. Why does the body remember? Why do we hold muscle memory of trauma instead of, move forward and get over with it? It sounds more fun, right? It's a survival mechanism in the primal mind that the body stores a trigger of a past threat in case that threat comes back. Then you'll be ready. Then you can survive, being the important word there, because that survival mechanism, it really only serves you to survive something if it happens again, not to thrive in that situation sometime in the future, if you get my gist. Now, this is a totally unconscious response to moments of stress that hijacks our frontal cortex mind, the part of us that's mature and logical and creative. Any moment that you're re-triggered like you were in the past, that same pathway is going to be activated. And you'll literally have the same physiological symptoms. If your mother snapped at you to be quiet when you were a child and you would feel a gripping in your belly and a tightening in your throat, a feeling of shame, you most likely will have something similar when a boss tells you in a verbal or nonverbal way that your ideas aren't valued, aren't important. It's amazing how these things can hold on in a very unconscious way. So when I say PTSD, you might think of like big traumas in your life, and you might not have any. Thank goodness a lot of us these days in the modern world, we don't have major traumas, but we have lowercase t traumas. I would say everyone has those. Moments when you felt invalidated, unheard, scolded and criticized, embarrassed or shamed. Think back to any moment in your childhood, let's say before the age of 16, that stands out as an imprint memory, something that you can think back to in vivid detail. Around your expression, your voice, your authenticity. It's probably still affecting you today. So what's the way out of this? How to work with our body, how to overcome speaking trauma, and work with the nervous system to rewire trauma, rewire our traumatic response so that we can feel better and have more choice in the moment now that we're adults. Well, here's the thing. The solution to this pattern of PTSD, it's not to focus on your content more and what you're going to say. It's not learning a bunch of public speaking best practices, tips and tricks, what to do with your hands and where to look and how to breathe even. Those actually might trigger your perfectionistic conditioning from childhood, which would be part of your PTSD, right? Just like treatment for PTSD victims, say, of war, veterans, they always treat these people through somatic exercises. In fact, there's an amazing modality that was specifically developed to support PTSD victims that's called somatic experiencing. I've done a lot of somatic experiencing exercises and worked with people with those practices for years. These practices go right into the unconscious mind that's expressing itself through the body and really helps to resolve the somatic reaction that you're experiencing on a root level. And I'll boil it down for you. The essence of any somatic exercise for PTSD is bringing the client back to a state of presence. Presence in the body, in the moment, in the room with you. This is a process of regulation within themselves and co-regulation with you. This is a process of regulation with themselves as well as co-regulation with me or the coach. A great example of somatic practices for PTSD is an exercise called 5-step grounding. It's actually often used in trauma centers to help people overcome shock. Let's do it together. It's very simple. The 5 steps are your 5 senses. So we're going to start with your sense of sight. Look around your physical 3D space that's around you right now. And one after the other, we're going to find 5 things for you to look at, focus on, and pay attention to. Starting with 1. Find something very specific to look at. first thing that grabs your attention, just look at it, pause, and really take it in. Let your eyes settle on it. Focus. Take a breath. And then find another one. Anything that catches your eye, something specific. Again, focus, settle, breathe. A third, focus, settle, breathe. And this last one, find a spot, focus on it, settle into it, breathe. Okay. The second sense is hearing. So you're going to find 4 things to hear very specifically. It could be white noise in your space. I hear the heater blowing in the background. Find something to listen to. And then another one, number 2 to listen to, something else. Number 3, something else in the background to listen to. And number 4, okay, 3 things you can touch. So I want you to reach out and touch something that has a unique texture around you. Really feel whatever that is underneath your fingertips. And then go and touch something else. Something completely different in texture, or there could be a temperature to it as well, warm or cool. And one more object, touch something, feel it, really allow the sensation to go in through your hand. Okay. 2 things that you can smell. Now this is a hard one, but if you just take a sniff in through your nose, what's the smell in the room you're in right now? And then if there's something nearby, maybe a glass of tea or something, can you lift it up and smell it? Okay. And one thing that you taste. If you have something to drink right with you, you could take a sip of it, which is what they would usually do. Like in a trauma center, they'd give you something to drink and ask you to be very mindful of the experience of tasting it. But you can also just take a swallow of your own mouth. Really feel and taste the experience of whatever's in your mouth, whether it's pleasant or unpleasant. Notice the difference after going through these 5 senses and really taking time. We actually went pretty fast with that. You could take twice as long. Isn't it interesting how anxiety and nerves, worry, fear just dissolve away when you bring yourself into the present moment? You can do an exercise like this before, during, and after an important speaking moment. Really, you can do it during as well to be aware of your senses. You can. And it's just one simple example of how somatic exercises bypass the logical mind, bypass old conditioning, and can resolve deep traumatic stress quickly. I hope this was helpful to you. If you'd like to go deeper with this work and have more experiences with somatic exercises, overcoming trauma around your voice, and creating a stronger relationship with your nervous system, I recommend checking out my masterclass at speaktoinspire.com and considering joining the Fully Expressed program. It'd be my pleasure to support you. The world needs your voice. Go out and speak to inspire. Thanks for listening. This has been She Speaks to Inspire with Julia Kraft, your authentic expression mentor and public speaking coach. I'm so glad you joined me. And I hope you got so much out of this episode. If you want to learn more about Speak to Inspire training programs and get inspired, head over to speaktoinspire.com or follow us on Instagram at She Speaks to Inspire. Never forget, the world needs your voice, and it's time for you to speak to inspire. See you on the next episode.